Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC, and today we're going to do a classic Mild Mannered review of this interesting little design. This is the Ferrum Forge designed mini Archbishop.
That dream within our dream.
Very interesting. It happens to be manufactured by We Knives, a very, very good knife company, knife manufacturer, and they do their own designs as well out of China. But yeah, so it's just a collaboration between the two, both Ferrum Forge here in the United States and we over there in China. So let's go ahead and get underway with this very interesting knife. It's one I've had my eye on. It is currently available on the Ferrum Forge website as well as on some retailer websites, and we'll talk about that more near the end of the video. But let's go ahead and get underway. So when we do a classic mild manner review, we'll talk blade, we'll talk action, we'll talk handles and scales, and then and hardware, and then we'll talk ergos and carry. And then I'll do some little summary items at the end. Usually that's where I mention cost and some of the other little odds and ends that didn't fall into any of those categories. So there we go. So this particular knife is not a big knife by any stretch of the imagination. So let's go ahead and do a spec check real quick and get that out of the way. So we've got a blade length here of 2.75 inches. If that'll focus, 2.75 inches. Cutting edge, as you can see, there's a pretty pronounced finger choil here, and that's we'll talk about that in blade, as well as in ergos, actually. It's got a cutting edge of 2.375 inches, a blade thickness of 0.117 inches. There you go. And a handle length, when it's all folded up here, of 3.625 inches and a handle thickness of 0.39 inches. And overall, that gives us a tip to tail here on this mini Archbishop of 6.3 inches with a weight of only 2.42 ounces. So very lightweight, very easy carry. So yeah, how about a couple of size comparisons just to get us centered here on what we're doing. How about another We knife that I actually think is interesting? Well, this is technically a Subvivi, but that's the budget brand for We knives, and this is the Elementum. So as you can see, Elementum is in fact, I think, a little bit bigger than the mini Archbishop. Here we've got the Cold Steel AD15. So yeah, it's definitely smaller than the Cold Steel AD15. And then how about, what have I got on this messy shelf up here that thankfully you can't see on camera? How about a mini Begleiter? So a Kaiser mini Begleiter. And these two knives actually compete for pocket time as in terms of size and lightweightness and ease of carry, and sort of what I, how I carry these two little knives. They're often, I'm choosing one of those two if I'm in the mood for that kind of carry. And then lastly, how about just a mild-mannered classic Swiss Army knife? So there you go. There's some size comparisons out of the way. So let's go ahead and get into this and talk blade. So we've got a very attractive, at least I think very attractive. Now, mind you, this is a mini Archbishop, so there's a larger big brother to this, or parent Archbishop, that Ferrum Forge is well known for having in their lineup. A great knife by many standards. I've never actually handled one, so I can only go by what I hear and read, but that seems to be the consensus about the full-size Archbishop. But back to the blade here. So we've got a drop point blade, pretty, nothing crazy there, drop point. It does have a flat grind. Interestingly, the grind, it starts, obviously you can sort of see the grind line there swooping down. It's a flat grind, as I mentioned, and then a stone washed finish. So there is a stone wash on this blade, which I think actually pairs very nicely with this particular G10, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. There is some jimping here up on the spine. The spine does have a little bit of chamfering or milling. I don't know if you would call that a swedge. I guess you could. It's not quite a crowned spine, but it's right there, and there's no sharp edges. The sharp edge is all right here. So there you go. Blade steel. So you can see, I think, tucked in right there. There you go. 9CR 18 MOV. Now that sounds very similar, right, to 8CR 13 MOV, but is actually a bit different, and I think quite a bit better. That seems to also be the consensus from those that test steel and do that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's a very good little steel and great to see on a budget knife and a nice alternative to D2. I know a lot of folks are getting a lot of D2 fatigue, so it was fun to see this particular knife not be in D2. So there you go. It does have this large blade hole there that can be used for flicking. We'll talk about that in action, but it's also an interesting kind of aesthetic piece. This knife came crazy sharp, not unusual considering both Ferrum Forge as well as the work that WE does on their grinds. Very, very good grind. You can see that, definitely didn't miss anything there. Yeah, just beautifully done, symmetric on both sides. Yeah, very, very nice. So the blade on this is really quite good, very slicey, and relatively thin. It's 0.11, so it's not a hyper thick blade stock for a small knife, which is nice, and I think really aids in its ability to be a good slicer for a little EDC carry. So there we go. Now let's talk action. So it's made by WE, right? And I think one of the things that, apart from really good fit and finish, I think one of the things that really sets WE apart out there in the knife world and really started to bring them into prominence was they just started really, really dialing in their actions. They started having some phenomenal actions. And that's carried over to this day. Now, I think there have been a few designs and a few of their knives I've handled that maybe had a little bit more sluggish, actions, a little softer detents, but by and large, and very consistently, their detents are very, very good, very dialed in for whatever the specific knife is, whether it's a flipper, whether it's a thumb stud or opening hole, whatever. And it's because of the size of that opening hole, it's very easy to finger flick this knife, so no worries there. But yeah, so I mean, I think all this to say, this is made by a company that really knows how to do very, very good actions. And this is no exception. Now, is it fall shuddy as actions go? No. I mean, it's a pretty light little blade. It's not really, and I suspect maybe with more use and more time, although I've had this for a couple months now, it might get a little more drop shuddy, and if I maybe get in there, I haven't opened it up to clean with it or anything, but yeah, and it is running on ball bearing washers. Let's see if we can get a little shot of that here with the flashlight. There you go. You can see the ball bearing. Maybe you can. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, maybe you can. Maybe you can't. They're in there. Trust me. So yeah. I mean, I think from a action standpoint, again, like I said, this is another WE knife. I mean, I think if you very similar, well, it's Civivi again, but it's a WE. It's WE for all intent and purpose, just a cheaper WE. And yeah, I mean, their actions are just very, very consistent. And yeah, it's great. Great little action. Nothing to complain about there. And like I said, they did it really nicely, both for flipping and finger flicking, if that's what you want to do. It doesn't have a hugely pronounced flipper tab either. A little bit of jimping on there. Yeah, just done really nicely. So let's talk handles, scales, hardware. So this is in a G10 on the scales here, and it's G10 scales sort of laid on top of stainless steel liners. And again, that's, and I hate to keep, maybe I don't hate to, it's another interesting comparison here. I think that's another interesting thing with the Civivi Elementum here. It's also stainless steel liners with a slightly smaller scale placed on top of that. So, interesting. I think it's interesting. In fact, these two knives may be worthy of a knife bartitsu if you watch this channel, which is something we do in the knife comparison world. So maybe let me know if that's something you'd like to see down in the comments, and I'll see if I can pull that together for you if that's something you'd want. But yeah, no, so G10, very nice here. The G10 comes in several colors, black, green, or this tan. I went with the tan. I don't really have any tan knives, but part of the reason I went with this, although I kind of like it, it really melds in if you're wearing like khakis or something like that, but kind of disappears in there. but it's also, I thought, kind of the easiest to do some sort of writ die if that's what I wanted to do. so I was kind of hedging my bets on that if that's something I ended up wanting to do. And as you can see, it's got that matching G10 backspacer right there. So yeah, now the liners are not milled out, far as I saw. They are just standard, but again, it's a pretty small knife, so no real issues there. All of the hardware is obviously stainless steel screws, and they are sort of panhead screws, perfectly flush. Love that a lot. I think that's great, particularly on a small little knife where ergos are always, kind of at a premium. The other thing that's really interesting about this is the custom Ferrum Forge pivot. So that's something that they've been doing more and more often of late that I've seen, and it's really cool. My Ferrum Forge Exec, which is also a knife made by We, but designed by Ferrum Forge, has that same custom pivot. I think it's really cool. It's really classy. I think it just brings a little level of just uniqueness to a knife that could just have a run-of-the-mill sort of pivot. But it's pivot hardware, and it's also a triangle, right? So it's not going to be free spinning, so that's great as well. Standard on the back, no difference there, or on the back. I always say that about this part of the knife. It's not the back, it's the clip side, I guess, whatever. I always call that the back of the knife. I don't know why. But yeah, so I really do think it adds a nice touch. It just classes the knife up a little bit, I think, in general. And then the last thing I want to mention with hardware is a pocket clip. It's a nice deep carry pocket clip, relatively deep carry. Let me get out this Hank here from MCMD Hankery. Let's see. Marina does good work, by the way. There you go. So as that's clipped in there, it's only a tiny little bit sticking out. And frankly, for a knife this size, it's not a bad thing to have maybe just a little bit out there to help you grab it before you take it out. So yeah, there you go. Nice little clip. Nothing to complain about there. Pretty good and springy. Slides in and out of the pocket well. And again, this G10 is textured, but it's not textured to the point of being really, really rough. It certainly isn't in this category by any stretch of the imagination. It's not smooth, but it's definitely, I think, a pretty happy medium. So no complaints there. All right. Let's talk ergos. Wow, I just about sliced my thumb right open right there on camera.
Going fast. Whoa, that was close.
That would have been interesting. Might have got some good views out of that. But no. So carry and ergonomics. Let's talk ergonomics first. Great ergonomics on this knife. Ferrum Forge is no stranger to good ergonomics, and this knife is no different. And it is a little small. It is a little on the smaller side. So again, even with my smaller hands, if I'm in the standard position, it's about 3.5, 3.25 fingers I can fit on there. But it's comfortable. It doesn't really create any hot spots. I feel secure in this position. But yeah, that really nice finger choil where you don't have any risk of getting cut there. At least I don't with my fingers. And maybe if you have really thick fingers, that might not be ideal, but for me it works great. No real hot spots off this flipper tab either, and with the jimping just in a perfect spot. This knife is just made for this kind of cutting. Really awesome, or even this kind of cutting, or just in general. So yeah, from an ergo standpoint, nothing really to complain about there at all, I don't think. So there you go. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention, let me do a little caveat here back in action. This is a liner lock. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. I apologize. It is a liner lock. It's got about 50% lockup, just for anybody who's wondering. But yeah, so I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. But back to the area at hand. So ergos are very good, and carry, likewise, very good. This is a very compact little knife, hard to argue with. You can whip it out, so to speak, take it out of your pocket, finger flip open, or give it a little flip, and it's ready for action, to carry along the theme of my puns here. So yeah, all going, carry's great on this, no problem. Now I will note on the carry, this is purely tip up right hand carry. So while the knife is fairly ambidextrous, it's a little bit of a bummer that the clip is not. Like I said, with this hole, it could be something that's used, as I fail it. It's something that, a lefty or righty could use. Obviously, the flipper tab works in both hands, and liner locks aren't the worst for left-handers, is sort of my understanding. I have a lefty in the house here, and she can, I think, attest to that. But yeah, the clip is not. So there you go. And it wouldn't have been a huge thing, but it might have messed with the aesthetics a little bit. And so I get that. It is sort of what it is. The other thing that's not on this knife, which you might find interesting, is a lanyard hole. There is no lanyard hole in this little knife. So there you go. Kind of interesting for those of you that are lanyard folks, just in case you were wondering. So final thoughts here. This is a really cool, fun little knife. I enjoy it a lot. I'm glad I picked it up. Now, I picked this up for $60. These are currently on sale on the Ferrum Forge website for $60. I checked as of the date of this video, and so that'll be pretty much around the time of the posting of this video, that they are on sale for $60. Now, I can't, if you're watching this down the road, I don't know they may be sold out or whatever. On the generally in the retailers, which Blade HQ, where I saw these, they were running about $75. The usual price on these is about $80. Here's my, here's my opinion on all of that. I think for $60, this is a great knife. Really, really good knife and a strong value. Definitely. I don't think that as much for another $20. So at $80 or $75, 75, whatever. But 80 doesn't feel quite that. And I was actually hesitant to pick this knife up. I was thinking about picking it up about the same time I picked up my exec, but didn't, just because of that $80 price tag. When this dropped down to 60, I swooped it right up, and I'm glad I did, and I think that's a great value. So keep that in mind if that's something that's maybe. I know I was talking to somebody recently on Instagram about that. So, if that's an issue for you on the price front, that's kind of where I land on it, and just my opinion. Just going to be honest with you here on any of that. So there you go. This is the Ferrum Forge Mini Archbishop. I think it's a great little knife, particularly at that $60 price tag. It's definitely a fun little carry and one that I'm enjoying. I'll be curious to see if I end up actually doing any things with these scales. But there you go. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If this is a video you've liked, I don't normally say this in my videos, but if you want to give it a like and maybe throw the channel a subscription, that would be great. It really helps me out and lets me know that you like the content and what I'm up to here. So I don't usually do that plug, but I figured, what the heck. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Most importantly, especially right now, please be safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.